Midweek Wednesday morning here on Birds 365. You got John McMullen Jody McDonald, and our pal from down the shore from 97.3 ESPN, the Sports Bash, Mike Gill, who's proud of
always repping West Virginia.
West Virginia drinking stein he's using. I hope there's adult beverages in there if you're talking about West Virginia. You better start drinking early in the morning.
They finally fired the AD, man. I feel like a new direction's coming for, the football program. Feels good. Feels good to get rid of when you fire somebody, right?
I don't know. Well, we already got the let's fire Jonathan. It's amazing, Mike. We go from 17-0. Is this team going to be perfect to how is this team going to win a game over the next 2 months?
Crazy.
It's amazing. How do these people live? How do these?
I don't know. I said yesterday on my show, guys, I would love, maybe not. I don't know that I want to torture myself. I would love to sit and watch, because I watch games by myself. I need to sit in my house and take notes and watch by myself. I can't have distraction. But for 1 week, I would love to sit with these people and just hear the reactions. I used to host a show with Darwin Walker, who played on those Jim Johnson teams. I might have told the story before, but he said to me, Jim Johnson said, I don't care how many yards we give up. I don't care. Between the 20s, give up as many yards as you want. Don't care. 17 points. That's the number. 17 points. Don't give up touchdowns. Give up field goals. So essentially, John Gannon's doing that. If you took off the nameplate, John Gannon's name, and slapped on Jim Johnson, I guarantee you these people would not dislike John Gannon as much. That's my hunch.
Yeah, except they gave up more than 17 this week against the
This week, yes. But on general, they have
we're talking about after this week's game. So what are they? They're not going to go back to week 2 and go, yeah, but we held them under 17. They're going to talk about the fact that the Commanders scored more points.
They complained then too, Jody Mack. They complained the team gives up. Look, did they play good defense Monday night? No, they did not. There's a lot of layers here, though. They gave up 3 points in the second half. Hello, offense, 3 and outs. You don't have to do them every single time. Did they make adjustments too late? Yeah. Here's the problem. The Eagles made their adjustments in the second half. They gave up 3 points. They didn't score until late in the game. They fumbled the ball 3 times. But if they made an adjustment, this is like the old, hey, if you would have left Zach Wheeler in the game, he would have figured out a way to get out of that inning. We're just assuming if they changed the way their defense looked, that Washington was going to stop running the ball on them. The Eagles don't have the personnel really to stop the run. That's a flaw of the roster construction, not so much the game plan in that game. They're too small up front. Their linebackers are too small. Washington, give them credit. Who runs the ball 49 times in 2022? Nobody. Washington said, we're going to do it. And guess what? I guarantee you Jeff Saturday, who's been there for 5 minutes, is going to say, I'm going to do the same thing. So get ready for it. Do the Eagles have the personnel this week all of a sudden magically to stop the run? That'll be challenging.
Yeah, and it will be challenging. And that's the one criticism that I think is valid. And we're going to talk about it. And before you got here, Mike, we talked about it. Now you got to see it on both sides of the football because you're going to be without Dallas Goedert for at least a couple weeks. And you mentioned the adjustments weren't made quick enough. The biggest adjustment being Jordan Davis. You don't have a backup for Jordan Davis. We've been talking about this since the spring. They signed that Noah Elise kid. I thought he had a chance to make the 53, got hurt. Just because he's a 340-pound run-stuffing nose tackle, but he's not available. They don't have that player. They don't really have a player for Dallas Goedert to be a backup. You can play a tight end, but you can't ask him to do what Dallas Goedert does.
Nope.
That's not the way this works. So you have to play a little bit of a different way. That, I think, is a valid criticism. The defense, too late. Maybe you got to play Nakobe Dean instead of Josiah Scott. Maybe you got to take a D-back off the field. Offensively, we kind of saw it with A.J. Brown because he wasn't healthy. You got to play a different way when A.J. Brown's not 100%, when you don't have Dallas Goedert. Maybe Miles Sanders has to be more involved. Maybe the running game. Maybe take advantage of the offensive line. This is the first test of that coaching staff, and I think they've been slow to react to these significant injuries.
Yeah, and the question is, what was the adjustment? What did they do in the second half of that? Not that, they only gave up 3 points. So what did they do in the second half to limit Washington's scoring? I watched some of this film back because I'm watching Marlon and Marvin Williams, the two nose tackles. They're getting blown off the ball, 7 yards. I mean, literally 7 yards they got blown off the ball. These teams are doubling on the nose. The nose tackle's getting blown back 5 yards, so he's in the way of the linebacker, then getting pushed into the safety. They had 10 guys in the box, 10 in the box. And the problem was one nose guard got blocked and took 2 of them out on multiple plays. The guard's pulling around. He's taking out the other linebacker. It's pretty simple what these teams are doing. They're saying, you're going to put a nose on us. He's not big enough. We'll double him. We'll crack down on Fletcher Cox. And then, boom, our running back just gets a little sliver. That's not the best running back you're about to face. So these other running backs are going to see that little hole and really get through it. So what can the adjustment be if they take that nose off? You mentioned Dean. He's not a run stuffer. I mean, Mike Singletary's not coming out in the field and making stops. He's not filling the gap and sticking his nose in there and making tackles. So they got some big problems coming forward here if they're going to stick with the 5-man front. But if they take the 5-man front off the field, I don't necessarily think they have the personnel to fix that issue either, because they simply don't have a run-stuffing linebacker.
Yeah, but isn't Nakobe Dean replacing Josiah Scott in the Knicks? Yeah. If the other team's not putting 3 wide receivers out there, you put another linebacker out there, you take your extra DB off. Isn't that an upgrade against the run, putting Nakobe Dean in over Josiah Scott?
It's an upgrade over Josiah Scott, but let's not sit here and say Nakobe Dean is Mike Singletary stepping in there and making tackles. He's a sideline-to-sideline guy who's out there because he's an athletic. That's the problem with the linebackers in today's game. They are not run stoppers. They are not guys who are going to plug holes.
Well, TJ is. To be fair,
TJ Edwards is, yes. But the problem with TJ Edwards was he was the guy who was getting blasted by the
guard. Here would be, this is what I would do. Not that it matters, but I wouldn't play the 5-man front. I play the traditional Jim Schwartz, more like 4-man front, which they do anyway. They toggle back and forth between 5 and 4. And that's where, so you're not playing a strict nose tackle. You're playing a 3 technique, which Fletcher Cox and Javon Hargrave and Milton Williams are more comfortable doing. Then you have the guy who sort of toggles between 2, maybe a little shade, but not a direct nose tackle where you're not going to demand the double team like Jordan Davis. And then you have the 3 traditional linebackers. And I'm not talking about Hassan Reddick because it drives me crazy. Well, Hassan Reddick's the 3rd line. No, he's an edge rusher. So stop with that disingenuous nonsense. I'm talking about 3 traditional linebackers, middle linebacker, Sam linebacker, weak side linebacker. And that's where I would have Nakobe Dean as that extra linebacker. You're taking Josiah Scott, the nickelback, on the field. And by the way, I told Jody I wouldn't do that if Devonta Maddox was here. But that's a significant downgrade. So you're not getting that much help from Josiah Scott when it comes to the other stuff. And at least then you have guys filling the gap. It's one gap. It's easier. It's more comfortable. But it's not, it's a change. And it's a short-term change that maybe helps you a little bit. I think you're right, Mike. They're never going to be a great run-defending team without Jordan Davis. But you have to do something.
Yeah,
you have to do something.
They built this team to play with the lead, attack the passer, get turnovers. They got a strip sack fumble on Monday night and turned it into points. They got an interception. When they had the lead, they played and did what their defense is built to do. Their defense is not built to say, hey, you're going to get into a fist fight with us, and we're going to have to sit there and try to stop the run 49 times. They're saying, look, if you want to run the ball all night on us and shorten the game, all right, we might have to get into that game every once in a while. But look who the leaders are. Is Buffalo running the ball? Is Kansas City running the ball? Is Minnesota going to ground and pound you? These teams that you're ultimately going to have to beat, you're putting your roster together to beat the elites. It's the teams like Washington and Indianapolis who have less talent who then try to navy the game up on you, that you now are not built to, styles make fights. And your style is not to beat Washington. It's to beat Buffalo and Kansas City. And therefore, throughout a 17-week season, you're going to have these challenges that you got to figure out for a week or two.
Right. But here's the problem with that. If you're talking about a Minnesota team, all right, I think their back actually could go for $150 against you. Now, they like to throw the football as well. They should, because they've got a talented wide receiver core and maybe the best in Justin Jefferson. But if they need to, they can adjust and just run the ball as well. You got to get to the playoffs first. And the Eagles were sitting pretty at 8-0, and now they've got some teams on their schedule that look like they can do what the Eagles are having trouble defending. We were talking, could they go 17-0? Now we're back into the conversation. Is 12 or 13 going to be enough to keep the home field advantage throughout the playoffs? Because I think that's pretty important too. Matchups are certainly important, but having the games at the link are pretty damn important for a playoff run too, Mike.
Yeah, I mean, look, I thought these games got overlooked, and I thought they overlooked Washington a little bit. I mean, there's a lot into this Washington thing, obviously, Rivera's mother passes. They obviously had a lot of emotion there. All of this got overlooked. The fact that Tyler Heineke's playing maybe his last game, and I'm sure he had that on his mind of, I'm going to show everybody that I shouldn't be replaced. So I think the Eagles kind of overlooked this team, and there's a malaise of a season. Over 17 weeks, we demand perfection that just isn't happening. They didn't play well on either side of the ball. But I would say, even if they're not stopping the run like the other night, all right, they did not do a good job. They gave up 3.1 yards a carry, which is convoluted because some of these short yard stops bring the average down. But for the most part, Washington ran it 49 times at 3 yards, not even 3.5 yards. I think most weeks you would say, if you're going to run 49 times at 3 yards a clip, we'll be okay with that. The problem is, they turned the ball over 3 times. The fourth one is out the window. If they don't turn the ball over, we're probably not yelling and screaming about the fact that they lost the game. So while they're going to look ugly in some of these games because the styles of these games are not going to be conducive to the way their roster is built, they should out-talent some of these teams. They should have out-talented Washington the other night, but they fumbled the ball multiple times. If Quez Watkins just stays down, do they win that game? Likely. If Dallas Goedert doesn't fumble there and get his face mask yanked off, does that drive continue and lead to points? Potentially. So this team is built to score more points and cause turnovers. The turnover, they were a plus 15 entering that game. At 1 week, you are going to have a week where that number flips. You can't be a plus 15 all season long. And I think it caught them. I think Indianapolis is an issue, though, because they're going to run the ball. The question is, can Indianapolis run the ball with such efficiency that they're going to score 28 points? Philadelphia should be able to put up 27 to 30 points against this team. And that's where, if you're a good team, Jody, you should be able to get through some of these matchups that are not conducive to your style and yet still win the game. Because you're right. The home field advantage is a huge, big thing that they had a stretch of games here where Dallas is playing Minnesota this week, where you have a chance to kind of pull away, and losing this game kept those teams in the mix.
You're right. We talked about that on your show, the complementary nature of football. And I don't think the offense held up. I think the defense is getting all the criticism. They were the ones up against it without the significant starter. Offensively, all right, the Eagles lost, as we said, A.J. Brown from an effectiveness standpoint. He gutted it out during the game. Now they're going to be without Dallas Goedert. I think the offense got a pass for that game in Washington. You mentioned the turnovers. That's a big part of it. Maybe it was karma. Nick Sirianni, Jonathan Gannon balking at the term luck or randomness, whatever you want to use. It's going to bite you at some point. But I don't think the offense as a whole held up its end of the bargain when sometimes you gotta pick it up.
They were
and
terrible.
Those three and outs, Mike.
They had a 3 and out right before the half that I thought was crucial.
Yeah.
They get the ball back. They run a 3 and out for 30 seconds. They were on the field for 30 seconds.
They were going Chip Kelly tempo.
Yes, and it's funny. The time of possession was the biggest lopsided since 2015. Who was the coach? Yeah. Chip Kelly. The defense, which got gashed, was on the field at a minute and a half every single time. They had a 3 and out to end the half, right? They give Washington points that they didn't deserve, so it's 20-14. They come right back. They get the kickoff, and they go 3 and out again. You come out at halftime and go 3 and out. They had 3 and outs in the second half, or 4 3 and outs in the second half of that game, I think, that absolutely put the defense right back out on the field. A defense that's not capable of stopping the run. Now you're telling them to go right back out there. I thought the offense, again, you're right, John, did not get enough. They came right out like gangbusters. They scored 2 touchdowns. They had a nice drive. They had a 12-play
They had a short field, too. They had an 18-yard field, so the defense deserves credit for that one.
But the second drive was a good drive that they scored the second touchdown. And then they had the 12-play drive where they scored, and you felt like, all right, it's 23-21. They're back in this game. They got the interception. Then the face mask happens, and that kind of changes the complexion of that game. But the 3 and outs really changed, I think, the complexion of that game.
Oh, by the way, you mentioned, Mike, and the Eagles scored 28 points in this game coming up against the Colts. Colts have not given up 28 points yet this year in any of their games. So their defense is not too shabby. You don't just pencil, all right, we'll pencil the Eagles in. Oh, sans Dallas Goedert? Let's pencil the Eagles in for 28 points against a team that hasn't given up 28 points yet this year. That's a kind of tough penciling to do.
And Jody, I think you're right. They're an interesting team because I think most of us, if this was Birds 365 in August and you were talking about predictions, we'd probably say Indianapolis is a playoff team. I think, right? We thought they had a roster. They were just a quarterback play away. They've just gone through quarterback, and they've been right there. Even with the switches in quarterbacks, they've been on the cusp. Matt Ryan, finally, they get this veteran to kind of stabilize things, much like Rivers did, and it's been a disaster. I think the Saturday move really changed the complexion of that team to simplify things and just kind of be the whole Saturday thing. I could do a week's worth of shows on Saturday. I love this conversation.
Yeah.
I think Saturday showed exactly what goes on in this league. You have a fraud like Josh McDaniels, who has no business being a leader of men and running a team, who has been there since minicamp, training camp, 10 weeks of the regular season, and he can't prepare his team enough to beat a guy who's been there 5 minutes. You know why? Go home and spend time with your wives, you fraud coaches. Go home and spend time with your family. Oh, I need to sleep in my office. No, you don't. Simplify the game plan and do what works. Hand the ball off to the best player on the field, and guess what, Josh McDaniels? Your fraud team couldn't handle it. And hopefully Jeff Saturday doesn't prove the Eagles coaches are spending too much time in the office and simplifies the game plan, because that would be a huge worry.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. I think way too many people look, and coaching is more important in the NFL than I think any other professional sport.
Totally agree on that, by the way.
I think that's fair to say. But at the end of the day, it is about the players. It is about the talent. Darius Slay had his worst game of the year. Fletcher Cox had his worst game of the year. You mentioned the turnovers on the offensive side of the ball. Certainly the worst performance from that perspective. And that's what the Eagles care about. They care about turnovers, explosive plays. They're the worst performance of the year when it came to turnovers. It's the players, man. It's the players. The players, Darius Slay's got to play better.
And John, I had people yesterday. I don't take calls. I can't deal with people on the phone anymore. So we have text messages that come in nonstop all day, and people are texting. Darius Slay got worked. Okay, he did not have a good game. Am I supposed to panic and say Darius Slay?
No, he's a good player. He's going to bounce back.
What am I going to do? Do I say put Mario Goodrich in the game and replace Darius Slay? Like, if that's your main complaint, like if I gave you one text message to my show, complain, and your text was Darius Slay, Well, then I feel pretty good. Like if you're nitpicking it, Slay was your issue. Okay, you had a bad game. You're not going to play 17.
But I guess my point is, you're right. Darius Slay's going to bounce back. I have no questions about that. He had a bad game. He didn't play up to his usual standard. He's going to bounce back. My point is, though, like, how do you blame that on Jonathan Gannon? Like, people assume, well, Jonathan Gannon's got to get Darius Slay playing better. I mean, what? He didn't play up to his standard. Slay was the first one to say that after the game. He's doing the same stuff he's doing every other week. My question is, when it comes to the coaches, and I'll throw Nick and Shane in it as well, when you're turning the football, what are you going to do? Nick Sirianni gets out there, jumps on his sword for Quez Watkins. I got to do a better job. I got to put him in drills where he understands that. No. That's a bad play by Quez Watkins. That part is, I don't get why people why they think coaches are this magical salve, whatever you want to call it, where they're
because on whatever days they're out there on the practice field, if you're hitting the guy with whatever apparatus to try to get him to not fumble, and you did it 250 times. Well, he should have been out there for 300 times, and he wouldn't have fumbled that ball. Look, it happened. He fumbled the ball. Nick Sirianni, as you said, took it. We got to do better job of teaching them ball security. No, he fumbled the ball. He got up. He didn't realize there was someone behind him. The guy did a good job. Sometimes you credit the defender. He didn't secure the ball very well. Now, is Quez Watkins, who through 10 weeks of the season, to my recollection, hasn't fumbled the football, caught the ball 50 yards down the field, and then fell down, tried to get back up. Is that exact thing going to happen again? I can't see it. And if it does, potentially they'll lose again. But if that is a week-to-week occurrence, yeah, you're in trouble. But this team has, through 8 weeks of the season, given us a sample size big enough to say they take care of the football, right? That Darius Slay generally is not going to get worked by the opponent's receiver. So I'm not going to sit here and panic all of a sudden that they're a team that fumbles and that Darius Slay all of a sudden can't play.
Here's my concern, Mike and John. As I said yesterday here on Birds 365, two guys came up real small defensively for the Philadelphia Eagles, two of their higher profile guys, two of their higher honored guys, and two of their higher paid guys, Darius Slay, Fletcher Cox. I'm 100% with both you guys. Guess what? I'm throwing Slay out there for 100% of the plays again this week and believing he's not going to have as bad a game as he did this past week against the Commanders. I don't know that about Fletcher Cox. I don't know that Fletcher Cox doesn't have the same game this week and get pushed around without Jordan Davis to make the blockers play him differently. I don't know that Fletcher doesn't come up small again this week. Do you just throw him out there for his standard number of Fletcher plays, or do you try and cut back, do things differently? Gannon's got to be able to adjust. We all agree he didn't adjust enough this past game against the Commanders. How much is Fletcher's playing time in question?
That one's interesting. I'm going back through, and John, I have to play the snaps here. The two backup tackles played 38 and 37 plays.
Yeah.
That means they used the nose a bunch in that game, right? They kept rotating those guys. 45% of the time they played an extra line guy. Fletcher played 70 snaps. Epps was 83. So imagine the secondary guys played almost all the snaps. So Fletcher came off the field. He was on the field 84% of the time. The question would be then, what's that?
That's a lot.
It's a lot.
84 is a lot.
The question would be then, if you're using the two guys at nose because Jordan Davis isn't here and they're rotating together, who's rotating in with Fletcher to take his snaps? Who's available to get more playing time in that role? And I guess that would be the problem right now. But I agree that Fletcher Cox week to week doesn't need to play 70 snaps. Maybe he would be more effective if you lessened them. But do they have another? I'm trying to go through is Milton Williams a guy who's going to play that spot? I don't know how many snaps did he get? 38. I mean, is he going to take that role? and get
well,
more.
He's already getting upgraded snaps because, as you mentioned, Davis isn't there. They're still using the 5-man fronts. Now, you could have elevated Marvin Wilson again. They didn't. But, you hear it with quarterbacks. I saw it with Arthur Smith. He's getting all the questions down in Atlanta, and he gave the old stock answer. Marcus Mariota gives us the best chance to win. Same thing in Indy, by the way. Matt Ryan isn't maybe what Matt Ryan was, but he gives them the best chance to win. I think the same thing applies here. Nobody talks about it at other positions. Why is Fletcher Cox plays much? He gives them the best chance to win. They don't have another way to go.
Well, that's the thing. It's like I say with Darius Slay. There's no one. If Slay's having a bad game, you're not just taking him out and putting someone in. If Fletcher Cox is having a bad game, I guess my question back to you, Jody, would be, who should get more snaps? Do they have another defensive tackle that you're like, why aren't they giving this guy more snaps?
I would say Milton Williams.
Okay, and he's playing.
But then you have that. Like Milton's already playing more snaps than he's ever played before. That might be a career high. I'd have to look it up. There's probably an injury game.
He played 38 snaps on Sunday.
He played a lot of snaps.
Yeah.
So you're going to put him up at 70 and put Fletcher down at 38? Never done it before.
No, John.
I think
there's a nice middle between those two numbers, Johnny Mac.
Yeah. No, I think
I didn't say flip-flop the two. I just said cut Fletcher's snaps somewhat in the middle and give Milton a couple more snaps.
It was a weird week in that the defense played so many snaps, and that's where the complementary aspect of it comes in. The offense has to do a better job. So they're not going to play 83 snaps every week.
I think where this conversation all leads back to is something we talked about a couple weeks ago, is how much they're missing how they call their defense with Jordan Davis not there. He allowed them to do a lot of things that Fletcher Cox doesn't have to get worried about being doubled, because they got to double and triple sometimes Jordan Davis. And with him not there, they are absolutely getting squashed on the nose. So you have to either think about getting out of that.
And then people it drives me insane. It drives me insane. And I already saw it in the comments. Well, Jordan Davis doesn't play that much. I don't know how many times I have to say this. It's about first down, getting the second down instead
down
of
first
and
down
10,
and distance, right?
Second and 10, or
John,
second.
The game the other night is the prime example. You're talking about it now. The down and distance on first. If they win first down, the whole complexion changes of how you call your defense. Now, if the other team wins on first down, now they have set the tone of your personnel. And they set the way that they want to call plays. If you win first down, you set the tone of what they have to call. And Davis not being out there is clearly, look, the whole offseason, they trade up to get this guy. They go out and get pass rusher after pass, and they trade it for a pass rusher, which we can get into. I don't know if we have enough time, but Robert Quinn is doing Zippo. No. They went out and got pass rush. They bulk up their secondary. They cover fantastically. The defense is predicated on this guy in the middle, down and distance, winning, and then having turnovers, forcing turnovers, plus 15. The blueprint that they put together is happening. It's not happening on Monday Night Football because Jordan Davis is not there. And by the way, it didn't happen on Thursday Night Football because we weren't watching. We were watching the Phillies. They didn't play very well in that game either because Jordan Davis and the defense was all discombobulated. They either have to, ride through this rough patch for the next couple of weeks and hope he gets back out there and is in shape and can play enough plays to get the snap counts back to where he was, or you're going to be in shootouts and struggle week to week, and you're going to have to take care of the football and win with your offense.
Yeah, so real quick, guys, I got the numbers. So Washington was 9 of 12 in the first half on third down. Which is unacceptable. They finished 12 of 21, so they got a lot better in the second half. 11 of those 21 third downs were 3rd and 1 or 3rd and 2 or 3rd and 3. So up to 3rd and 3. They were 8 of 11 on those. 8 of 11 when it's 3rd and 3 or less. And then do the math. 8 of 11 turns into 4 of 10, which is more acceptable. It's not brain surgery. If you're 3rd and short, it's easy for the offense. If it's 3rd and longer, it's more difficult. and that's how obviously the Eagles and everybody else wants to play. That's where Jordan Davis affects the game. That's where he affects the game. Second and long, third and long. They don't have as many second and third and longs because he's not on the field on first down.
All right, Mike Gill, we've had a good session of second-guessing the coaches and numbers of snaps played here today, so I'm going to ask you to do it in advance. We know Dallas Goedert is out of the lineup this week. How they're going to replace him, who they're going to replace him with, how the offense is going to look without him. Does the offense do it a little differently than the defense did, which was try and replace Jordan Davis when they don't really have a guy who can replace Jordan Davis, rather than turn the whole defense around and do it differently? Will they try and go different type offense without Dallas Goedert? Go 4 wide receiver sets?
Yeah.
We'll just deal with the tight end for today. Who's going to get Dallas Goedert snaps on Sunday?
I would imagine, is Tyree Jackson-John going to be activated?
We'll know today.
Okay. Well, I would imagine that it will be a collective, collaborative effort at that position. But I would think they're going to go differently than the defense will, and they will employ more Zach Pascal, and you'll see more 4 wides, and they will basically. Now, it depends. Where's A.J. Brown's health? Can they feature him more this week? That we don't know. I guess we'll find those answers out today. But I would think the offense will go a little bit different than the defense because they have the capability to. They have the personnel that they can alter their thought process. I mean, you can't just stick some guy and play nose who's not equipped to play nose. But I can play 4 wides. I have those. I can do a little bit more. So I don't think you're going to see Jack Stahl all of a sudden become a fantasy football pickup because he's taking over the Dallas Goedert role. Grant Calcaterra has 1 catch for 40 yards, but I doubt that he will get very many during this spot here. And if Tyree Jackson's healthy, he would be interesting. The question is, how often are those guys going to be on the field? I think you'll see more of Zach Pascal now in the offense, more featuring Devonta Smith, A.J. Brown. I think those guys will have to basically, or will not have to because they can, will have bigger outputs during this stretch without Goedert. But just as challenging as losing Avonte Maddox and Jordan Davis. We're forgetting Maddox not being out there too because, again, he's helpful in the run game. Josiah Scott, bupkis in the run game. Losing Goedert is probably the one guy on the offense, A.J. Brown, obviously. But, Devonta Smith could probably hold his own for a week or two. But you do not have a suitable replacement, so you're going to have to do something different. And I think they will. You'll see more wide receiver action this week.
I just got a text here. Is Grant Calcaterra says, tell Gill 1 reception, 1 target, 40 yards. Yeah. That's a pretty good average.
You keep up that pace.
I gave it to him. I had those numbers off the top of my head, Jody. Come on.
Yeah. You did, but nice. You made it sound like he's got no chance to be the man this week when he's got the best per catch reception in the entire National Football League. What's wrong with you, Gill?
I don't think he's going to get enough snaps to get the targets.
And by the way, also,
if he gets 3 snaps at 40 per, that's 120 yards. I think it'll help the Eagles win the game.
Very Deshaun Jackson-esque.
A very daunting situation the Eagles are in because they're facing the head coach with the greatest winning percentage in NFL
history. Too, yeah. Jeff Saturday, yeah.
And I would imagine that he will simplify the game. He probably watched that tape and had a big old smile and said, you know what?
Yeah, another win. Lineman, man.
Another win for the big uglies up there.
Yeah. Jonathan Taylor left, Jonathan Taylor right, and Jonathan Taylor up the middle. Eagles better be ready for it, more ready than they were for the Commanders' running attack. Mr. Gill, always a pleasure. Thank you much for jumping on board. We'll talk to you again next week, big guy.
All right, guys. See ya.
Thanks.